Vienna is not just the home of the schnitzel, it's one of the world's most livable cities, with a handful of world-class stadiums as well as some quirky old grounds with plenty of history. So here are the stadiums and arenas of Vienna. Steffel Arena. This unique venue is home to the biggest ice hockey team in town, the Vienna Capitals. I say it's unique due to features like the roof, that significantly slants downwards towards the center on both sides, making for an interesting view for those in the nosebleeds. And secondly, look at this little section of seating here. That's kinda cool. There's a matching one on the other side as well. Also, there is a rink next door that is home to a women's team, but it doesn't quite meet the minimum capacity for this video. Allianz Stadion is the newest stadium in the city, which is not all that surprising when you take a look at it from street level in particular. This aluminium tube-like structure looks like something out of Shrek. Hang on. Star Trek. Sorry, same thing. It's only really a 99.9% new stadium though, as it was built on the site of the club's old stadium. More or less, the field has been turned 90 degrees, and there is at least one part of the original stadium that remains. This floodlight tower here. It's no longer functioning as a floodlight, but it functions as a reminder of the past. Ernst-Happel-Stadion is the biggest stadium in the country and is home to the Austrian national team. It's a venue that does have a bit of a dark history. I'm not going to go into it, but some disturbing Nazi-related stuff was carried out in the bowels of the stadium. However, it quickly moved on from that dark era. In fact, it hosted a match between Austria and France in late 1945, which must have been a somewhat surreal experience. Nowadays, the national team are keen on building a new home, or at least converting this into a football-specific stadium. Which is fair enough, because not many other wealthy European countries have their national teams playing at a stadium with a running track. Wiener Sportclub Stadion. Having opened in 1904, this is comfortably the oldest football stadium of note in the city. And up until recently, it was really showing its age. The main grandstand in particular was in very poor condition. It has since been demolished, and a new stand has been built in its place. Ironically, this terrace over here, colloquially known as the cemetery stand, remains alive and well. In case you were wondering, it's called the cemetery stand because, surprise surprise, it backs onto a huge cemetery. Wiener Stadthalle includes about 6 different venues in one. A pretty cool looking swimming pool for instance. So I should specify that we're talking about Hall D, which is the biggest indoor sports venue in the city. Although, it seems that sport makes up just a minor portion of the events that take place here, the Erste Bank Open, an annual tennis tournament, being the highlight of the sporting calendar. Architecturally speaking, it's a pretty interesting design. The seating layout is very unconventional, and the ceiling looks as though it's made from tinfoil. Motion Invest Arena. I think that Maria Enzersdorf, where this stadium is located, might technically be its own town separate from Vienna proper. But I mean, come on, it's just over there, 16 kilometers from the center of town. You could run there and back and it wouldn't even be a marathon. Well, if it's not Vienna, then we can at least agree that it's more Viennese than a Viennetta ice cream, which I believe is a British creation. Anyway, this stadium's capacity is coming from a fairly even mix of seating and terracing. There's also a grass embankment at each end. But given that it's covered in advertising, I don't think people are sitting there. Nearby we have Stadion Mödling, which was home to the club that merged with another club to form Admira Wacker, the club that plays at the previous stadium. In terms of professional or even semi-professional teams, this ground is just home to the Rangers, an American football team. This stadium consists of mostly concrete steps. Just the main stand has seating, albeit in the form of benches. It's nothing special, but it does the job. Stadion Hoher Watter. This small, unassuming football ground has a fascinating history. Unbelievably, it was the preeminent football stadium in the country, before Ernst Happel Stadium was built. It once hosted crowds of 85,000 people. The capacity is nowhere near that nowadays, but you can still kind of see how it achieved such large crowds. Being built into the side of a hill allowed for a huge amphitheatre to be formed. So tens of thousands of people just congregated up on the hill. Understandably, the local council eventually decided that that portion of the stadium could no longer be used. It was an accident waiting to happen. Also, shout out to the Isle of Man. Franz Horst Stadion is just a few years younger than the last one, but rather than becoming less relevant over the years, it has become more relevant, as it's home to not only one of the country's biggest football clubs, but the biggest American football team in Austria, the Vienna Vikings, who moved in recently. In a serendipitous turn of events, both clubs wear purple, so despite it not being built for them, the Vikings still feel at home. Not that Vikings have traditionally had any difficulty with making themselves at home. Anyway, it's a beautiful stadium, although that telecommunications tower could be seen as a bit of an eyesore. And those were the Stadiums of Vienna, Austria. Please consider subscribing if you're new around here, and as always, danke for watching, have a good one.